In the basement of a business center on the Garden Ring, where daylight was just a memory, Alex Petrov sat surrounded by digital corpses. Hundreds of dead devices lay on the metal shelves of his lab. Smartphones with shattered screens, laptops with fried motherboards, tablets bricked by botched updates. Each device held someone's life, and Alex was the only one who could bring it back to life. Digital necromancer, as his colleagues called him. Officially, he worked as a leading data recovery specialist at Digital Forensics, but in reality, he was doing something more, resurrecting the voices of those who could no longer speak. The cold neon lights cast a bluish light on his face, highlighting the deep shadows under his eyes and the premature gray in his dark hair. At 35, Alex looked 10 years older. The price of dealing with other people's tragedies, recorded in kilobytes and megabytes. Lines of code flickered on the monitor. Screen, an algorithm for recovering data from a damaged SSD drive. Another family drama, walled up in bad sectors and damaged file tables. The wife suspects her husband of cheating. The husband claims that the hard drive broke by accident. Alex knew the truth even before he started the scan. Hidden folders, deleted messages, photos that no one was supposed to see. People thought that deleting a file meant it was gone. But Alex knew better. In the digital world, nothing disappears without a trace. Everything leaves behind traces, fragments, ghosts of data that can be pieced together if you know where to look. The lab door opened with a mechanical click of an electronic lock. A woman in a dark coat appeared in the doorway, raindrops dripping from her short blonde hair. Detective Marina Sokolova was one of the few in the Moscow police force who understood the value of digital evidence. "Hi, Alex," she said, shaking the water off her shoulder. "I have a job for you." Alex didn't look up from the screen. Treason, fraud, or murder? Murder. Now he looked up. Murder cases were always special, not just data recovery, but finding the truth amid the digital chaos of someone's final days. Irina pulled a transparent bag with an iPhone in a blue case out of her bag. The screen was cracked, the case was deformed, the charging port was clogged with dried dirt. Marina Sokolova, 28 years old, marketer. Irina put the package on the table. They found her 3 days ago in her apartment. Officially, suicide, an overdose of antidepressants, but something doesn't add up. Alex took the bag and examined the device through the transparent plastic. iPhone 12, serious damage, but the motherboard is most likely intact. What exactly doesn't add up? Marina was successful. She had plans for the future, no mental problems. Plus, the antidepressants weren't hers. The prescription was in the name of her deceased grandmother, written 3 years ago. Irina sat down on the only free chair in the lab, pushing aside the body of the disassembled laptop. But the main thing is that the neighbors heard a man's voice in her apartment an hour before they found her body. Marina lived alone and only met through dating apps. Alex nodded, already imagining the scope of the work, reconstructing correspondence, analyzing calls, studying the victim's last actions, digital reconstruction of the last hours of life. How much time? The sooner the better. If this is indeed murder, the killer is on the loose. Alex opened the package and took out the phone. The device was cold as dead flesh, but inside, in the silicon neurons and flash memory, Marina Sokolova's digital soul still glowed. "Leave him. With me. I'll call you when I find something." Irina stood up but lingered at the door. "Alex, be careful. I have a bad feeling about this case." When the door closed behind the detective, Alex was left alone with another digital corpse. He connected the phone to a special adapter and launched the diagnostic program. Green lines of code ran across the screen, scanning every sector of memory. The battery was completely discharged, but this was not a problem. External power allowed to bypass the damaged controllers. After half an hour, the system booted up, and the iPhone screen came to life with a pale glow. Alex felt a familiar thrill, the moment of resurrection, when a dead device came back to life. Each time it was like a small miracle, albeit a technical one. The main screen showed the usual set of apps: Instagram, WhatsApp, Telegram, a few games, banking apps, nothing out of the ordinary. Alex started by analyzing the latest calls. Last Outgoing call. Yesterday at 22:47, number not identified. No incoming calls after that time. But in the message log, Alex frowned. The last WhatsApp message was sent this morning, 8 hours after Marina's supposed death. A message to a group of friends. Girls, I met a cool guy. I'll tell you the details later. My heart started beating faster. Dead people don't write messages. Alex delved into the analysis. Instagram, a new post 3 hours ago. A photo of coffee in a trendy cafe with the caption, "A good morning starts with a good coffee." Telegram, activity in several chats, responses to messages, even participation in a survey about choosing a restaurant for the weekend. Someone else's finger was touching the screen. Someone else's eyes were reading Marina's correspondence. Someone was using her accounts, pretending to be alive. Alex launched a metadata analysis program. Every digital action left traces: IP addresses, geolocations, timestamps, device identifiers. Modern smartphones were spies in their owners' pockets, recording their every move. The first results made him recoil from the screen. The activity was not coming from this phone. The IP address belonged to another device located in the Sokolniki area, 20 kilometers from Marina's apartment. Someone had accessed her accounts and was using them remotely, but that was just the beginning. Alex opened the Badu app where Marina met men. The last correspondence was with the user Danilo K., an attractive man of 30 with intelligent eyes and a charming smile. The correspondence began a week ago and developed in the standard way: light flirting, exchange of interests, gradual, rapprochement. But in his last message, sent an hour before Marina's death, Danilo suggested meeting. "I know a great place where we can talk calmly. I'll send you the address in an hour." The address never came. But an hour later, Marina was dead. Alex copied the correspondence and launched a search through databases. Photos of Danilo K. were found in several places. Stock images from model sites, processed by a neural network to create a unique face. The perfect mask for a hunter. But the most terrifying discovery was yet to come. In the deleted messages section of the app, Alex found correspondence that someone tried to delete. Marina communicated not only with Danilo, but also with 3 other girls, Yulia, Anya, and Sveta. They all complained about problems in their personal lives, looking for support and advice. 3 days ago, Marina suddenly began to actively ask about their weekend plans, asking about where they like to spend time, who they meet. The questions were strange, intrusive, not her style. Alex scrolled through the correspondence further and stopped at the message sent this morning on behalf of the dead Marina. "Yulia, listen, I met an amazing guy. He's so interesting, smart. He says he has a friend you'll definitely like. Want to meet him? I can give you his contact information." Julia responded enthusiastically. "Of course, give me his number." Danilo was already hunting for a new victim. Using the dead Marina's account as bait, Alex quickly found Julia's contacts in the phone book and dialed her number. Beeps. Long, endless beeps. No one answered. He tried to write to her on WhatsApp. "Yulia, this is urgent. Don't meet the guy. Marina recommended to you. It's dangerous." The message went out, but there was no response. The status showed online, but the activity looked suspicious, too regular, too mechanical. Alex felt a chill in the back of his neck. What if Yulia was already dead? What if her accounts had also been taken over by the killer? He returned to analyzing Marina's phone and delved into the system logs. Each application left traces of its work: launch times, data transfers, geolocation requests. Gradually, a picture of the last hours of the girl's life emerged. At 21:30, Marina received a message with the meeting address. At 21:45, she called a taxi. At 22:15, she arrived at the specified address, an abandoned industrial zone in Kapotnya. At 22:30, her phone lost GPS signal. At 23:15, the device appeared online again, but in a different location, Sokolniki. It was from there that activity on social networks was subsequently conducted. Alex presented the scenario. Marina arrives at a meeting. The killer lures her into a trap, kills her, takes her phone. Returns home to Sokolniki and begins to study her digital life, contacts, correspondence, habits. creates a perfect imitation of her behavior online. But why? Why does the killer need the victim's accounts? The answer came when Alex found a hidden folder in his phone's gallery. Dozens of screenshots of conversations with different men on dating apps. Marina was an active user, communicating with many people. Her contacts and trust could be used to access new victims. The killer wasn't just killing, he was building a network. Each victim became a node in the web, through which he could reach his next targets. Alex grabbed the phone and dialed Irina's number. "I have bad news," he said when the detective answered. "Marina has been murdered, and the killer is already hunting for his next victim." Outside the laboratory window, Moscow's twilight was gathering, but Alex knew his workday was just beginning. Somewhere in the city, a serial killer was using digital technology to hunt people, and only a digital necromancer could stop him, raising the dead one last time so they can point to their killer. The Moscow night enveloped the city like a digital darkness, permeated with millions of glowing dots, smartphone screens, neon signs, skyscraper windows where someone was still awake. Alex Petrov dissolved in this technogenic gloom of his laboratory, where time lost all meaning and reality was reduced to streams of data on monitor screens. 4 hours had passed since Detective Volkova had left, leaving him alone with the digital corpse of Marina Sokolova. 4 hours during which Alex had been plunging deeper and deeper into the virtual labyrinth created by the killer. The coffee in his mug had long since cooled, turning into a bitter liquid the color of old blood, but he continued to drink it mechanically, not noticing the taste. A complex network of connections unfolded on the main monitor. Nodes and lines connecting accounts, IP addresses, timestamps. The algorithm he had spent the night writing was slowly unraveling the patterns of the digital ghost. Every variable, every function was an attempt to penetrate the killer's mind, to understand the logic behind his actions. But the deeper Alex dug, the more horrified he became. This wasn't just an imitation. The killer was creating perfect digital copies of his victims. On the second screen, he studied Marina's account activity since her death. The messages were written in her style, with the same turns of phrase, the same emojis she used in life. The timing of the messages matched her usual schedule. Even the pauses between responses were natural, not too fast, not too slow. Alex launched an analysis of linguistic patterns. The program compared the writing style of the living Marina with the posthumous messages. The result made him recoil from the screen. The match was 94%, a near-perfect imitation. This level of accuracy could not have been achieved by chance. The killer either studied the victim for months or used machine learning. Alex switched to analyzing the metadata of messages. Every digital action left traces, device ID, app version, network characteristics, and here he found his first clue. The messages were sent not from Marina's original iPhone, but from an emulator, a program that simulates the operation of a mobile device on a computer. But the emulator was configured to fully match the characteristics of the victim's phone, the version of iOS, the installed applications, even the hardware features. Someone copied Marina's digital identity with all the details. Alex's fingers flew across the keyboard, launching new search queries. He traced the IP address from which the activity had been conducted, a VPN server in the Netherlands, then another in Singapore, then a proxy in Romania. A classic cover-the-track scheme. But each chain had a weak link. Alex found a temporary vulnerability, a moment at 0327 when the VPN connection was broken for a few seconds. During these seconds, one IP address slipped through without masking. Moscow provider, Sokolniki district. He crossed the address with databases, a residential building on Sokolnichesky Val Street, an old building built in Soviet times, now inhabited by IT specialists and freelancers who valued cheap apartments and did not ask unnecessary questions of their neighbors. But that wasn't enough. Alex needed evidence, a connection between the killer and the victims. He went back to analyzing Marina's phone and began to recover deleted data, photos, messages, files that someone had tried to erase. In the Photos app's trash, he found screenshots of conversations that weren't in the messengers themselves. Marina had been chatting not only with Danilo K., but also with other dating app users, and these conversations followed the same pattern. An attractive profile, gradual rapprochement, an offer to meet. Alex compared photos from different accounts. The faces were different, but the algorithm that created them had the same signature. They were all created by a neural network, an artificial intelligence that generated faces of non-existent people. The killer wasn't just a hacker. He was a machine learning specialist. Alex ran a search through professional databases, AI developers, computer vision specialists, generative neural network experts. The list was long, but a geographic filter narrowed it down to 24 names. One name made him freeze. Dmitry Kodov, 38. PhD in technical sciences, specialist in user behavior analysis and content personalization. His last place of work was Technovision, the company where Alex worked 3 years ago before moving to digital forensics. They knew each other. Kodov was a brilliant analyst, but he was fired for violating ethics. He used personal data of users for experiments without their consent. Alex remembered the scandal, remembered how Kodov claimed that people can be studied like lab rats, if you know which buttons to press. Now these words sounded ominous. Alex found Kodov's address in Technovision's personnel records, the same building in Sokolniki where the activity in the victim's accounts originated. The match was too close to be accidental, but more evidence was needed. Alex delved into the analysis of programming patterns. Each developer had their own signature, a way of writing code, preferences in algorithms, typical errors. The emulator, used to simulate Marina's device, contained traces of such a signature. Alex compared the code with samples of Kodov's work from the corporate repository Technovision. The similarities were undeniable, the same functions, the same architecture, even the comments were written in the same style. Dmitry Kodov turned his skills into a weapon, but the most terrible discovery was yet to come. Alex found traces of a third-party application installed in Marina's phone's system logs, a keylogger that recorded all keystrokes. The application was disguised as a security update and was installed automatically when connecting to a certain Wi-Fi network. Kodov didn't just kill his victims. He studied them for months, recording every message, every password, every detail of their digital lives. Then he used that data to create perfect imitations. Alex felt sick. How many more victims? How many dead accounts continued to live online, luring new people into a trap? He tried calling Yulia, his potential next victim. The phone had been unavailable for 6 hours. Her WhatsApp status showed online, but her activity seemed mechanical. Messages arrived at precise intervals, without the emotional outbursts that characterize live communication. Julia was dead, and her account was already being used to hunt for more victims. Alex dialed Detective Volkova's number. Irina, I need a search warrant. I have the killer's address. 4 in the morning. Alex, are you sure? Dmitry Kodov, Sokolnichesky Val Street, Building 42, Apartment 15. He killed more than just Marina, and if we don't stop him now, there will be more victims. Pause. Alex heard Irina writing something down. Okay, but I need some solid evidence. For the judge, I have digital traces linking him to crime scenes, IP addresses, programming signatures, even code samples. That's enough. Meet me outside the house in an hour. And Alex, take all the evidence with you. If we're wrong, we'll both be taken off the case. Alex closed his phone and looked at the screens filled with data. Somewhere in this digital labyrinth were the ghosts of the dead girls, Marina, Yulia, and others whose names he didn't yet know. Their accounts continued to live online, writing messages, communicating with people, as if death was just a technical glitch that could be fixed with the right algorithm. But Dmitry Kodov was not a lone programmer. The scale of the operation, the complexity of the algorithms, the resources required for such work, all indicated that there was a larger organization behind him. Alex copied all the data onto encrypted media and hid the backups in different places in the lab. If something happens to him, the evidence should survive. As he stepped out of the basement onto the empty Moscow street, he felt the cold air burn his lungs. The city slept, unaware that poisoned blood flowed through its digital veins. The data of the dead used to kill the living. Ahead lay a meeting with the man who had turned technology into a weapon of death. Dmitry Kodov, a former colleague, a machine learning genius who had become a digital serial killer. Alex got into the car and started the engine. In the dawn darkness of Moscow, he was waiting to hunt a ghost who had learned to kill with the hands of others, hiding behind the avatars of non-existent people. It's time to raise the dead one last time, so that they can testify against their killer. An abandoned data center on the outskirts of Moscow stood like a digital mausoleum in an industrial wasteland. Windowless concrete walls held the silence of server rooms that once pulsed with the electronic pulse of a corporate empire. Now, the place was silent, broken only by the hum of ventilation and the faint whir of transformers. Alex Petrov stood in front of the metal door, feeling the cold wind of the October night creeping under his jacket. In his pocket was a tape recorder, his last hope of recording the killer's confession. Next to him, Detective Marina Sokolova was checking her weapon, her face tense in the light of the flashlight. "The capture team will be waiting outside," she whispered. "If you're not out in an hour, we're storming in." Alex nodded, knowing that an hour might be too long. Dmitry Kodov wasn't just a killer, he was the architect of a digital hell where the dead continued to kill the living. The door swung open with a creak of rusty hinges. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the smell of ozone and dust. The emergency lighting cast a reddish glow on the metal surfaces, turning the corridors into the arteries of a dead organism. Alex walked through a maze of server racks, each of which had once processed terabytes of information. Most of the machines were silent now, but some still blinked their LEDs like fireflies in a digital underworld. "Welcome to my lab, Alex." The voice echoed in the void. Dmitry Kodov emerged from behind the server counter, a tall, thin man with prematurely gray hair and eyes that had once glowed with the enthusiasm of an explorer, but now radiated a cold madness. "Do you remember this place?" Kodov asked, throwing up his hands. "This is where you and I worked on a user behavior analysis project. We dreamed about how technology would make the world a better place." Alex recognized the room, the old Technovision office, which the company had abandoned 5 years ago after going bankrupt. Kodov had turned it into his secret base. "You killed Marina Sokolova and Yulia, and how many others?" Kodov chuckled as he approached his workstation, where several monitors displayed the activity of dozens of social media accounts. "I didn't kill, I studied. Each death was an experiment, an attempt to understand the limits of human gullibility. How easy is it to deceive people if you know their digital habits?" Messages sent on behalf of dead girls flashed across the screens, each one a lure for a new victim. "You know what struck me most about our experiments?" Kodov continued, without waiting for an answer. "People are more willing to trust a computer than a living person. If an algorithm tells them that someone is trustworthy, they turn off their instinct for self-preservation." Alex slowly approached, turning on the voice recorder in his pocket. "And my sister? Lena committed suicide 3 years ago after being cyberbullied. Was that your experiment too?" Kodov's face lit up with morbid interest. "Oh, you guessed it. Yes, Elena was one of the first. I needed to understand if it was possible to drive a person to suicide using only anonymous accounts and psychological pressure." The words hit Alex like a physical blow. For 3 years he had blamed himself for his sister's death, thinking he had failed to protect her. But it turned out she had been murdered with the surgical precision of a digital psychopath. The result exceeded expectations, Kodov continued. Elena lasted 2 weeks. The others broke faster. The shortest experiment took 4 days. Alex clenched his fists, fighting the urge to lunge at the killer. But he needed a confession. Proof. Why? Why are you doing this? Kodov turned to the monitors that displayed the profiles of his victims. Because I could. Because people have become so dependent on digital technology that they have lost the ability to distinguish reality from simulation. I simply exploit this weakness. He pressed a few keys, and graphs appeared on the screens. Death statistics, analysis of the effectiveness of various methods of influence, predictions of the victim's behavior. Each murder added to my database. Now I can predict a person's reaction to psychological pressure with 87% accuracy. Can you imagine the possibilities? Alex moved closer, studying the screens. They weren't just statistics. They were a map of human weakness, made of blood and suffering. But you're not the only one, are you? Kodov turned around, surprise flashing in his eyes. You're smarter than I thought. Yes, I have colleagues all over the world. We exchange data, methods, experimental results. Your sister's death, for example, helped improve algorithms in Singapore. On one of the monitors, a world map appeared with dots, the centers of a network of digital killers spread across the continents. People think the internet has made the world safer. In reality, it has simply changed the nature of hunting. Now the predator can be thousands of miles away from the prey. Alex realized that Kodov's arrest would not change anything. The network would survive, find a new node, and continue to operate. But there's one problem, Kodov said, taking a pistol out of his desk drawer. You know too much. And unlike my usual victims, you can't be driven to suicide. You're too mentally stable. Alex retreated, but it was too late. Kodov pointed his gun at him. You know what's coming next? Tomorrow the news will report the tragic death of an IT specialist who couldn't handle the pressure of handling murder victim data. Suicide is a very common problem in our profession. The police know where I am. The police will find your body. And a note confessing that you killed the girls yourself and then couldn't live with the guilt. I have samples of your texts. The algorithm will easily create a convincing imitation. Kodov approached, holding the pistol at arm's length. The irony is that you will actually become a digital ghost. Your accounts will live on after death, spreading my version of events across the web. At that moment, Alex noticed a familiar program on the screen, a remote access system that he himself had developed at Technovision. Kodov used his own algorithms to control the network of killers. Alex had the last card. Dima, look at screen number 3. Kodov turned his head automatically, and Alex took advantage of the moment of inattention. He rushed not at the killer, but to the keyboard of the main server. His fingers quickly typed the command he knew by heart, the emergency shutdown code for the system, an algorithm he had laid down himself as a defense against hacker attacks. Servers started shutting down. One by one, error messages flashed across screens, and the killer database collapsed in real time. What are you doing? Kodov shouted, but it was too late. The self-destruct system was activated. Terabytes of data on victims, methods of murder, plans for future experiments were turning into digital garbage. Kodov fired, but the bullet missed, his hands shaking with rage. Alex rolled behind the server rack and continued entering commands from the backup terminal. You don't understand, Kodov shouted, firing towards the server. This database is the result of decades of work. We studied the nature of human fear. I understand perfectly, Alex replied, running the final delete command. That's why I'm destroying it. The last server went down. The data center was silent, broken only by the sound of approaching police sirens. Kodov stood among the dead machines, looking at the dark screens. His face expressed not anger, but surprise, as if he could not believe that someone was capable of destroying the fruits of scientific work. You think you've won? He asked, lowering his gun. This is just one node in the network. There are dozens of such centers around the world. I know, Alex replied. But every node destroyed saves someone's life. The police burst into the hall, just as Kodov raised the gun to his own head. The experiment is over, he said, and pulled the trigger. A week later, Alex was sitting in his lab, studying a new case. On the table was the smartphone of his latest victim, a girl who had met a prince online and disappeared after their first date. The destruction of Kodova's database did indeed strike a blow to the network of digital killers, but it did not destroy it. In other cities, in other countries, similar death laboratories continued to operate. The monitor screen flashed messages from dead people's profiles, dozens of accounts that continued to live online, luring new victims. Alex could restore the data, find traces of the killers, expose the schemes, but he could not stop the system itself. Digital ghosts will exist as long as the internet exists, and the digital necromancer will resurrect them again and again, giving the dead one last chance to point the finger at their killers. Outside the laboratory window, Moscow night was falling. But in the digital world, time had lost its meaning. There it was always midnight. The hour when predators go hunting and victims trustingly open messages from strangers. Alex turned on the new data recovery program and prepared for another dive into the abyss. He knew this war would never end. But every life saved, every killer exposed, was a small victory for the light over the digital darkness. Somewhere on the web, Lena's ghost smiled at him, finally at peace. And Kotov's ghost was preparing new experiments, using other people's hands and other people's accounts. In a world where death has become an algorithm, the digital necromancer remains the last defender of the living, and the hunt continued.